Hello and welcome to our webinar for newly admitted distance students. First of all, I would like to congratulate you for being admitted to one of the Linköping's distance programs and to wish you a great start of your new academic adventures here in Linköping University. We will be all waiting for you. I'm Maria Kousola, a student ambassador at Linköping University, and I'm here with two current students and a newly graduate student from the programs Master in Adult Learning and Global Change, Masters in Child Studies, and Masters in Gender Studies, Intersectionality and Change. Let's meet them. So I will give some time and space to hear from them. And I will be asking you if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, which program are you currently in, and why did you choose it? So what about you, Anna?
Hi, my name is Anna. I come from Greece, but I have been living in Sweden for 7 years. I attend the Adult Learning and Global Change program. I work as a primary school teacher, and I wanted to make a change in my career, so I decided to attend this program and start working with adults, I hope so, in the future. And that's the reason why I chose it. And I also wanted to have the possibility to be able to study while traveling between Sweden and Greece. And I am very satisfied with this choice until now.
Nice. Thank you very much. And how about you, Emily?
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily. I am from the Chicago area from the United States, and I'm in the Child Studies program. I found this program just through some research when I was looking into different studies. And what appealed to me was the flexibility that distance learning provided, as well as I just wanted to deepen my understanding of children and childhood. That's kind of where my background had been the past few years. So this program has been great for me. And I have been living in Sweden for about 2 years now.
Great, that sounds really nice. How about you, Charlotte? Could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi, everybody. Hi, yes, I'm Charlotte, so I'm from the UK. I've recently graduated from the Gender, Intersectionality and Change program. So the reason that I chose that program is a little bit like Anna in that I was looking for something new. I work in sustainability, so I was trying to kind of look what I could do to further my knowledge in that and also to kind of move into different areas. But alongside my master's, I was also working full time. So again, I needed that flexibility of something that I can do alongside working, which obviously a distance learning one is. You can do that because you can work at weekends and evenings whenever you can open a book. So this is what really drew me to the course.
Thank you very much, Charlotte, for sharing with us. All right, so in this webinar, we will be telling you a little bit more about the programs that we have already mentioned. And also, we will give you the opportunity to ask questions at the end of our talk. So the first part will be that we will be discussing, and then you will have the opportunity to type. There is a part Q&A in the bottom of this Zoom. There you can type your questions. Some of them we will be replying immediately, and some of them we will take them by the end. And just keep in mind that do not write your questions in the chat, because we will not be following those questions and we will not be able to go through them. Another thing that I would like to mention is that this webinar is being recorded, and there will be the repetition available on our website. The part that is going to be recorded is the main discussion with our student representatives, and we will not record the Q&A session. Another thing that I would like to mention before we start to answer some information and questions about the programs is that please note that the distance studies at Linköping University do not require your presence in Sweden, and therefore cannot give to students the right for a resident permit for studies in Sweden. That's something that it's good to mention, and of course if you have some more questions about it, we can take them later on. So, all right, let's start. The first area that we would like to cover is about the programs and the common working methods. How do these programs work, and what are the forms of examinations? So I will be asking each student one by one so that we can get a little bit better idea of how is it going to work out after you start your studies. So Anna, could you talk a little bit about the program Adult Learning and Global Change?
Yes, the program, I think we have attended 6 courses. In the beginning of each course, we got the readings that we were expected to read during the course. We had almost a week to get prepared. Then we had a forum to attend and discuss about the readings and we had a theme every week that we would discuss about. And then we had to write some individual and some group essays. And after submitting the essays, we would get our grades. So there was a lot of work to be done in order to complete the course. And it was very important to be active and work with different ways all the time and help each other in the forum and try to write good essays and be active in the groups. So I like this way of approaching knowledge through many many ways.
Yes, and something that we can mention about your program, it is full-time studies or part-time studies?
Part-time studies, 50%, but it still demands a lot of work to be done. So you cannot say that I leave it for the weekend. You have to work almost every day.
That's nice. That's nice to hear. All right, then we can move on to Emily, that represents the Masters in Child Studies.
Yes, it sounds like our program was similar to Anna's. My program is a full-time studies program. So our program was great in that we would receive a study guide for each course, and each course was about a month long, give or take a few weeks. And in that study guide, each week would be planned out for us, which was super helpful because sometimes I feel like half the battle is trying to manage all of the work and how to plan out your time. So we would receive, exactly like Anna said, certain readings and recorded lectures that we would take in on specific weeks. And then we would usually have one assignment that would be pass-fail, which was usually a written assignment, followed by like your end paper. It was usually a paper that you would write, which would be graded. And then along the way, you would have usually written discussions, like on a discussion board with your fellow classmates to kind of break down the material. And then, of course, you would always have access to your professors if you had any questions. But for the most part, everything was recorded, like your lectures, so that you could plan your time within the given week of what you had to do, if that makes sense. So just like Anna said too, it's a lot of work. You definitely can't really put it off until the weekend. But it was really nice in how we received a set schedule and what sort of our expectations were for that week and for that course.
Thank you, Emily, for sharing. And that's very important to mention that even though the programs are distant, it's good to know that actually they are full-time and they're requiring quite a lot of work. So it's not work that we can neglect until later, because then it will be more problematic. That's really good. All right, then we can move on to Charlotte, who is representing gender studies, intersectionality and change.
Yes, so really similar to Anna and Emily in that it's usually about 6 courses per year. Also, the gender is 100% course, so it's full time, which is very intense, but you know, you kind of get used to it. And actually, I found that the second year was much more relaxed than the first. So if you can get through the first and get through that really intense kind of workload at the start, you definitely feel like you've really achieved, and you know, the second year is much more relaxed. And then the way that it's laid out is quite similar, in that you've got the recorded lectures. We had tutor groups as well, so we'd all take it in turns to run one or to chair our group. So we usually start with about 10 people per group, and obviously that changes as time goes on, but that's really your like support network. I mean, I graduated last year and I still keep in touch with some of the people that were in my group, because you know, you really go on that journey together. So they're like the most important like parts of your learning, really, especially because you are distant, so you can feel like you're really kind of disconnected from the actual learning environment, which is, you know, you really want to make sure that you're tapping into your group as much as possible.
Thank you, Charlotte. So that's actually a very good point that you're making, that the studies are distance, and how could that work with bonding with the other classmates? And as far as I understood, your experience was quite good. Is that the case for the rest of you? Anna?
Yes, I was, in the beginning, I was curious to see how distance learning could work. But surprisingly for me, I found out that it was easy to meet people with common interests, and all these things came out in the forum while we were discussing about topics, and we could see similar ideas and meet others, other students. And yes, I have contact with many of them, personal contact, and we help each other often. It's amazing. I think it worked better than I thought before starting my studies.
Very nice. And how about you, Emily?
Yeah, I think I would have a similar thing to say. It sounds kind of strange. Like, of course, it can be difficult, you know, only communicating over the computer, but there's so many different avenues and different things that you do with your, you know, fellow classmates, that after a few weeks, you get to know people and, you know, where they come from, what their background is, and what your interests are compared to theirs, which is fun to find similar ones. So we use like a platform to communicate with one another about studies. And then we also would work in smaller groups over like video chat as well. So there's definitely many different ways for you to get to know your other classmates and work with them. So that's nice, all the different opportunities.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing. All right, then we move on to the next question, which is about time management. It is online studies, and how do you deal with that? And especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. So let's start with Emily this time. How did you find about that? How was it for you?
It's definitely a learning experience, especially for me personally. I hadn't been in a school setting or like in a study setting in a few years. So it took me a while to kind of get back into the swing of things, just as far as like to know what you are capable of, like what is actually a reasonable amount of time for you to finish a reading or for you to finish a paper. And I think the biggest thing for me is that it just takes so much time. It always takes longer than you expected. So that's just another point to make, that many people do work, but you really have to be cognizant and realistic with what can you do, what can you get done within a few hours, within the week, you know, within a day. So that's important to just get to know yourself. As I mentioned before, my program, I'm not sure if it was similar with the other ones, but my program was great in that we really got structured and detailed plans with what the course entailed, what readings we had to do, and what was expected from us for each week, so that we could look at the week and say, okay, I can do, you know, these 2 things on this day and the rest of the things throughout the week. So we really knew what was expected of us, and that was really helpful. So the program was definitely encouraging and supportive of you and your time management. But it's good that you know yourself and what you can expect from yourself as well.
That's great to hear, and it sounds very empowering, actually. What about you, Charlotte?
Hi, so there's a couple of people asking if I worked full-time along my studies, and yes, I did. So, and I had a very demanding job as well. You know, I was working in London, working like 8 till 6 every day. So it was quite a challenge to find the time, but you know, day to day, all the masters is reading. You know, we have an assignment at the end of every 6 or the end of every course. We also had some reflection diaries that we would, you know, write a page and a half every week, which you're just basically writing your thoughts about what you've been doing. But the vast majority, obviously until you get to your thesis, is reading. So as soon as you sit down, you get your, you know, I use Mendeley, which I think they'll tell you about in the library. It's a PDF viewer, which for organization, it's fantastic because you can keep all your notes on there. And for me, like reading something and then having a sticky note in something, a note on my phone, a note on something else, to just be able to manage that is just phenomenal. And you can just open it up on your phone, and you know, anytime you sit down, read, literally just read, because if you haven't studied for a while, that first week will be a real, or maybe the first course will be a real smack in the face. Yeah, and it's, you know, people coming into winter as well, it's already a bit of a daunting time, and then you're quite busy. So to like be able to really freely manage your mental health as well as your what's going on at your work, your life, just making sure you've got that space to just give yourself time to do it. And yeah, I think that's everything really.
Yeah, that's very admirable, actually, because as we mentioned before, the programs are full-time and you're supposed to be committed full-time. And that's really amazing when you also have a life and some work. Of course, it's manageable, but also like it means that you were super motivated and engaged in your studies. That's really nice. Okay, so I can pass the floor now to Anna.
For me, time management has been the biggest challenge in the studies. I also work full time and have a 9-year-old daughter. So it has been hard to combine family, working life with studies. And as you said before, the first course was a big surprise. I never expected that we had to be so active in the forums, and that we would have to be fast with the readings. So I think that if someone has a good time management, then it's not so hard to keep the dates and the deadlines. It can work pretty well, but you have to be very organized. As soon as you get the readings, you have to start read everything so that you are prepared, and then you can write your thoughts in the forums on time, because you have like 5 working days to attend the forums. So if you don't do it at those days, then you have missed more or less a chance to interact with other students. So you have to be really organized and start reading from the beginning when you get the structure of the course. And it has been always very structured, actually. So I think that our professors have organized it very well.
Thank you, Anna. And those are really great tips, especially that you're mentioning that you also had your family and at the same time you had to study. So that's really nice. And now actually you give me quite good ground to go into the last section of today's discussion, that how do we stay motivated? Could you share some tips and tricks? What were your biggest insights of studying an online program, especially when it's free time? All right, so let's start with Charlotte.
Yeah, so I mentioned at the beginning the tutor groups. So, you know, you'll find that you lean on them for support so much. Obviously, you've got the professors and they're amazing. So email, you know, I would usually receive, I don't want to say this in case I get told off, but usually within the day, you know, they'd get back to you. They were really supportive. But your tutor group is what will get you through it. You know, if you're having a bad day or you don't quite understand something and you need to run it by people, they are your motivation, they're your support. So yeah, just really lean on them. And as well, I think another thing that keeps you motivated is the scope for what you'll read in gender studies. It's not just gender, you know, the world opens up and there's so many different avenues that you can explore, and that's such a great way to keep motivated, is find what it is that you're really interested in and just go with that. Because if you end up getting stuck reading something that, you know, you're not feeling that much, there's so much more you can do. And the first year really is having so many different readings from so many different academics and philosophers and people that have been writing, that you can really just find what it is that keeps you motivated and keeps you going. So that's a really great thing that I didn't realize how much I would learn. I mean, I know it sounds stupid because obviously you're here to learn, but just how much the world opened up is just absolutely just mind-blowing.
Thank you, Charlotte. I keep on hearing about the forums, and that's amazing, actually, that even though the studies are distant and they're online, basically, I keep on hearing from all of you that you had a great support system and you were actually to get to know the classmates and the tutors and to have a very good relationship with them. Is that the case for you, Anna, as well?
Yes, and this is very motivating, I think. And what I found very interesting in this master program is that in adult learning and global change program, there is a cooperation between Linköping University and 3 other universities, one in Canada, one in South Africa, and one in Australia. So I got to meet people from all these places and different cultures, and I heard things that I had never thought before about. I found so interesting how education is connected with our everyday lives, and what the biggest insight that this program gave me was that learning comes through every act almost we have in the day, and that's how I kept my motivation high, because I could see things and become more conscious about what's going on in my daily life, and how I can connect the theory I get from the program with my life, my school life, my life in general, and how I learn. So it was easy, and it's very interesting to see how this program, even though it's from distance, was asking us all the time to write essays about our working places, often our about topics that have to do with ourselves. So there was a connection between theory and practice, though, and our local experiences through a distant program. It was amazing how this combination worked, and I always found interesting to tell other people about my learning experiences every day, and to learn from the others too.
That is great to hear. And actually, you're bringing two interesting perspectives. One of the cultural, it's like getting to know people from all over the world without even having to travel. So that is super good. And also this combination of the international learning, but also bringing experiences from the local reality that you're living. And that is really amazing achievement of the program.
Mm.
Yeah. So we move on to Emily. What kept you motivated?
I think it's very similar to what Anna and Charlotte have been saying. Simply as far as the information and the studies in general that you're learning, it definitely opens up your world. And the program is, I mean, it's cool and unique in that you can study all of these things generally and then specific courses or focuses. But then within that, you can really find what you're interested in. And then you're really given and presented an opportunity to kind of dive deeper in that with your thesis. My program specifically, we wrote a thesis at the end of year 1, and then I'm currently writing my second thesis for the end of year 2. And in both of those experiences, you really get to combine what you have learned and what you like and where you want to go deeper. And that's been really motivating to just kind of express your interest and find out more about what you like within the program. It's also been really inspiring to get to work with some of the professors, both on like a supervisor level. They help you really with your thesis, but also just like a professor level as well. They're, you know, accessible, and they all come from such unique backgrounds. It's really interesting and inspiring to kind of see, you know, where they come from and what they have to offer. And then I would also just say that, you know, sometimes you need little motivation just, you know, personally, like throughout the week or throughout the day. And for me, I have found that it's nice to kind of set a time. So like, okay, I need to get this done today. What can I do in this amount of time? And then how am I going to relax or kind of unwind or take a step back for the day or for the week? Some weeks are really busy. And like Charlotte was saying, you just have to read, you know, whenever you can. But it's nice to kind of plan a break, whether it's like once a week or, you know, in the evenings or whatever you can do. So it's nice to also take a step back a little bit as well from all of the work that is expected from you.
That last part actually that you're mentioning is very important, because not only we need to take care about our career and about our studies, but also our mental health, and that's super important. Yeah. So finally, I would ask you if you could tell me in a sentence or a couple of words, what are your overall impressions about studying in Linköping University? So how about you, Anna?
Yes, I enjoyed it very much. I think that if you like education, geography, politics, then you are in the right program.
Thank you. And Emily?
Yeah, I would say overall, the flexibility that distance studies has provided has been great. I have really loved the program in that all the information that I have learned has been super pertinent to me and, you know, applicable to me. So that's been really lovely as well. So overall, it's been a great experience for me.
Great, really nice to hear. And Charlotte?
Yeah, I miss this program so much. So I'm doing my second distance learning masters at the moment through a UK university, and my experience is so different. I know I don't know with how it's going to work going forward with the face-to-face groups, but oh, I really missed like the program, the interaction, having so much time with your professors. You don't realize until you go to another uni that actually we're so lucky to be able to have, you know, our professors on email, our tutor groups that are there as our support. So yeah, I miss this program a lot. I don't know if it's whether it's the Swedish context or it's Linköping in particular, but it's fantastic. It's such a good program.
You all sound so happy and satisfied with your choice. So I'm really glad to hear that. I'm actually also studying the Gender Studies, Intersectionality and Change, and it has been a very big learning point. I also live in Linköping, so I really do enjoy Sweden and living in the city. So it was very good also for me to hear about your experiences from the other programs. So thank you all for the useful information, Anna, Emily, and Charlotte. And now we will take some time for the Q&A questions. We will answer one by one, and we will take proper time for that. But for those of you who is watching right now the recorded webinar, it is time to say goodbye. And good luck with arriving in Linköping after the summer. We will be here to wait for you, and we will be looking forward for these adventures that you're starting now. So bye from all of us.